This week in Texas, there's another hat in the ring for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by Republican John Cornyn. Democratic State Representative James Tallarico joins us to talk about entering the race. Plus, our political insiders Otis Evagaru and Court Kenning weigh in on the increasingly crowded contest. And we sit down with Harris County Commissioner Leslie Briones to discuss her plan to bridge the budget gap. Also, a conversation with congressional candidate Alex Mueller, who's running for the newly redrawn Congressional District 9. This week in Texas. Hello again, I'm Tom Abrams. This week in Texas, we begin with a race for U.S. Senate. A new candidate entering the arena, Democrat State Representative James Tallarico. Already running for the seat in 2026 are Democrat Terry Virts, a former astronaut and combat pilot, former Congressman Colin Allred, and on the Republican side, it's longtime incumbent Senator John Cornyn and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Now, we spoke with Tallarico on Tuesday, the day he announced his candidacy, and began by asking why he's running.
Well, I firmly believe that all 30 million Texans deserve a senator who's going to represent their interests in our nation's capital and not the interests of billionaire megadonors. And that's increasingly what we see in this corrupt political system. I really don't think of politics as left versus right. I think about it as top versus bottom. And right now, the most wealthy, powerful people in our country are corrupting this political system of ours to enrich themselves at our expense. And so my hope in this campaign is to bring Texans together across the ideological divide so that we can come together and take power back for working people in this state.
So do you find an interesting lane in a Democratic primary, given your religious background, your background as an educator, as opposed to someone who might traditionally appeal to progressives?
Well, I look forward to a Democratic primary because it means I can share some hard truths with my own party. I already have a religion. I already have a sports team. The only reason I'm a Democrat is because I want to organize, win political power, and make people's lives better. And if the Democratic Party is not doing that, which it hasn't done that well over the past few years, then things need to change. And so I'm going to be speaking out where my party needs to change and how it needs to adapt so that we can actually take on this broken, corrupt political system on behalf of working people.
How does it need to change? What do Democrats need to do differently, especially here in Texas, where they haven't won a statewide office in more than 30 years?
Well, I think the Democratic Party nationally has forgotten how to fight for people. Here in Texas Democrats, whether it was LBJ or Barbara Jordan or Ann Richards, or even Texas House Democrats who stood up to the powers that be in this last special legislative session, we know how to fight for people. We know how to use every tool in our toolbox to deliver on the things that matter to Texans. And so I hope we can take that fighting spirit and show the National Democratic Party how to fight for people once again.
So what makes you different from the other two who are currently in the race?
Well, I have a history of winning tough elections. I first got elected to the state house by winning a Trump district. It was a district that President Trump won in 2016, and then I won it in the very next election. I didn't do it with just Democrats. I did it with independents and Republicans too. I brought people together into a big tent. We didn't agree on everything. No one's going to agree with me on everything. But people believed that I was going to shoot straight with them. They believed that I would fight for their interests and not the interests of billionaire megadonors. And so that playbook that I used in Williamson County, Texas, is something that I'm going to take statewide. And I'm going to try to bring people together. In an age of division and polarized politics, the most important thing we could do right now is all come together across these divisions to take power back for ourselves and our communities.
So if you're on social media, any of the various apps, you have a pretty big following, and people share a lot of the speeches or points that you've made inside the Capitol in Austin. How do you translate that into the real world?
Well, social media is just one tool in the toolbox, but I'm a big believer in in-person campaigning. When I first flipped that Trump district in Williamson County, I did it by running an unconventional campaign. At one point, I walked the entire length of my district, 25 miles on foot in the Texas heat, holding town halls along the walk and live streaming the whole thing online. That's the kind of approach I want to take. It's digital, but it's also in person, and it is showing up everywhere, talking to everyone, going to places that a Democrat wouldn't typically go, talking to people that a Democratic candidate wouldn't normally talk to. It's what I did this summer when I went on Joe Rogan's podcast and was able to connect with him on a whole host of issues where we found common ground. That's the kind of campaign I want to run, and I hope that it will surprise a lot of people in the months ahead.
If there's one message that you want to get out as far as an issue-specific message to Texans as you begin this journey, what would it be?
Well, as a state legislator, I have passed major legislation in a Republican-dominated legislature on lowering the cost of prescription drugs, lowering the cost of childcare, lowering the cost of housing. These are the things that Texans are facing, and it is oftentimes keeping the American dream out of reach for most Texans. That should be unacceptable, regardless of your political affiliation. So I'm going to be talking about these high costs and how we can actually bring them down, but it's going to require all of us coming together to take that power back.
So last question for you, unless there's anything else you want to add. You said you already have a sports team. Who is it?
Well, I'm a diehard Texas Longhorns fan, which is not always easy, as you know. But my team has made a comeback in recent seasons, and I hope the same can be true for my political party.
Good. Anything else you'd like to add?
The one thing I don't think I mentioned is before I ever became a politician, I was a public school teacher on the west side of San Antonio, and I taught middle school. I often say teaching middle school is the best preparation for politics. If you want someone who knows how to be tough but also be compassionate, hire a middle school teacher.
State Representative James Tallarico, thanks so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let's talk more about this race with our political insider, strategist Court Kenning and Otis Avogaru. Otis, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the race with 3 Democrats now seeking the nomination.
That's great. It's great for democracy. You're going to have James Tallarico. You're going to have Colin Allred, those 2 at the top. And that's what's really important for the Democratic Party. We need a healthy primary, particularly what's going to happen on the Republican side. You're going to have John Cornyn, who's old and stale, and then you're going to have Ken Paxton, who's going through a divorce on biblical grounds. So it's going to be a great contrast of what the Democrats are going to have to offer and then what the Republicans are going to have to offer for the people of Texas come the midterms in November.
Court, your thoughts?
It appears that if you're in an elected position that you have a target on your back, and that's what's going on. You've got Senator Cornyn, who has had an established career in the U.S. Senate, was very, very close to being majority leader, and it was Ted Cruz, I think, who got rid of that. But it's going to be a race. He's going to have a race on his hand. I've known Senator Cornyn for a long time, back when he was Attorney General Cornyn, and I would put my money on him, no doubt. But it's going to be a race. And as Otis was talking about some of the issues in the race, it's going to get dirty, and you're probably not going to see some of the candidates actually throwing the dirt. It's going to be other entities supporting those candidates that are going to be throwing stuff.
So what I'm interested in is if these are the 5 candidates, including Terry Virts, the former astronaut and commander of the International Space Station. There's talk about Wesley Hunt, who's been running expensive ads all over the state of Texas, well outside his district. On the Republican side, there's talk about Jasmine Crockett out in the field, maybe throwing her out in the ring, even Beto O'Rourke getting into the race. Your thoughts about, is this the field or does it get bigger?
No, it could get bigger. I mean, anyone can run, right? Anyone can file, but we know who the names are, right? Right now, we'll talk about what's happening now, right? With James Tallarico, Colin Allred. I wish all the best of luck to astronaut Terry Virts, but that's going to be an uphill battle going up against Colin Allred and James Tallarico. And on the Republican side with Ken Paxton and John Cornyn. I mean, this is who it's going to be. Jasmine Crockett is going to be great. It's going to be great to see if she gets in. She's definitely going to be a polarizing figure and very well popular in the Democratic Party. We'll see how that plays out in the general as well, too. There's also folks like Joaquin Castro who's thinking about running as well, too. So there's a lot of names. But right now, this field seems like it's going to be what it is with the filing deadline approaching December 8th and the beginning of filing November 8th. People got to make decisions. This is a big state. 31 million people. Got to talk to a lot of people, and time is of the essence.
And on the Democrat side, you've got folks, they're old, I guess. You've got Congressman Doggett, who was going to run in the new districts out of the new redistricting plan, who got the pressure from the younger people in the party who want to have a more of a move out the establishment and move in new blood. And that's the issues going on with the Democrat Party too. So it's going to be an interesting election year, a non-presidential election year, but a gubernatorial election year, and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, between the Senate race and the gubernatorial race, this is going to be pretty fascinating. Not to mention the way that some of these congressional races are starting to shake out.
Well, let's not forget the lieutenant governor's race as well.
Sure. Is that really going to be a race?
Well, there's only two ways to run: unopposed or scared.
Right, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective on that. And when we come back, we talk with Harris County Commissioner Leslie Briones about the budget. Welcome back. The Harris County budget process has been contentious, with Judge Lena Hidalgo at odds with most of her colleagues from both parties. The budget director says pay raises for law enforcement are fueling a budget gap that Hidalgo says can't be plugged without significant cuts to services. ABC 13's Luke Jones reports.
I'm going to let you continue with the court. I don't want to be a part of this nonsense. All right, thank you.
Judge Lena Hidalgo said she'd had enough. But half an hour later, she was back alongside her colleagues on Commissioner's Court, hashing out possible budget cuts ahead of next week's deadline. Today's discussions characterized by a series of walkouts, 2 by Hidalgo.
There's a proposal.
Several by Commissioner Tom Ramsey, who repeatedly got up and left while Hidalgo was speaking. At times, the meeting contentious.
And the only amendment I would suggest, Judge, is that...
Why don't you let me finish my sentence? Okay, so what we're doing, and as I said, if you'd like to run the court, you can run against me next time.
That last remark directed at Commissioner Adrian Garcia. Commissioners are trying to close a $200 million deficit, about half of that created by a 37% pay increase for Harris County Sheriff's deputies, according to the county's budget director. Commissioners already approved a 1-year hiring freeze, projected to save $25 million. Judge Hidalgo scrambled to avoid additional cuts, including $600,000 slated for air monitoring, but ultimately failed.
Ellis moves it. Is there a second to not cut air monitoring? Okay, we will remember this next time we have a chemical fire.
Her frustration on full display when efforts to restore funding for the Juvenile Probation Department met a similar fate.
We seem to be totally immune to not supporting and, in fact, harming our children. I don't understand.
With that, Hidalgo handed the meeting to Commissioner Rodney Ellis and exited for a second time, leaving commissioners with this.
I don't know what we're doing here for not standing up for children. Shame on you.
Thanks to Luke Jones for that report. I'm now joined by Harris County Precinct 4 Commissioner Leslie Briones to talk more about the budget. You have your own version of the budget, which you says meets all the needs. It gets rid of the budget gap without cutting too many services. Tell me about your plan.
Yes. So, Tom, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. So, yesterday evening, we voted to post the budget that we have agreed upon, and this budget preserves and protects all core services. There will be minimal impact to any forward-facing services that the county offers the community. We have a zero deficit, we have a balanced budget, and we did it without having to go to the voters and ask that we raise their taxes further. And so I'm just so thankful for the months of work of our budget office, the 5 court offices, the over 70 county departments, and most importantly, the community, because we had budget town halls across the county, surveys, of course, folks came to court, called, emailed, and so I am very proud that this budget reflects the top priorities that my constituents have asked me to fight for on their behalf, which is public safety, public infrastructure, public health, and disaster preparedness and response.
Now, part of that, and you can correct me if my numbers are off a little bit, is that you identified some 1,100 positions which are vacant that you don't necessarily need to fill. How won't that impact services if you're talking about 1,100 employees?
So I can go into a ton of detail, but the executive summary is the county has approximately 20,000 employees at any given time in terms of position control numbers. We have at any given time approximately 2,000 vacancies. So this vacancy control really focused on those vacancies that have been open for a long time and have been unfilled for a long time, and the work has continued. So the vacancy savings, which was approximately 11 million in savings that we identified, just targets a small subset of a little over 100 vacancies. So by zeroing in a very thoughtful, targeted way as to these positions have been open. And Same thing with the hiring freeze, very thoughtful, very targeted, exceptions for mission critical departments and positions, exceptions where folks can come and make the case. So again, very thoughtful, very targeted. And the hiring freeze alone, we were able to find approximately 25 million in savings vacancy. And so before becoming your commissioner, and I was a chief operations officer. So my team and I, in terms of scouring these budgets to find smart savings. And to me, this was really important because I grew up check to check. And I never wanted for anything, but I remember very distinctly what it was like to grow up check to check. And what I hear time and time again from my constituents is just concerns about affordability. So before I go and approve and vote for us to go to the voters to raise their taxes, I want to know that we have found every saving. So whether that is improving how we purchase technology, laptops, et cetera, because we can get a volume discount if we do it in a more streamlined manner, purchasing of software licenses, fleet. You know, I have a 2015 vehicle at home, right? If it's safe, if it's reliable, we don't need to continue that spending. So how can we best be stewards of taxpayer dollars in a way that protects the priorities, continues to deliver on the priorities, but that we're finding these savings, which I believe no one has, you know, everyone wants to make sure that their elected officials are doing the hard work to deliver on the priorities in a way that we're making sure we're using taxpayer dollars as strategically as possible.
Now, one of the ways in which this budget has been stretched is the pay raise for deputies to compete with the city of Houston to keep law enforcement. There was a proposal by Commissioner Ellis to delay, as the city had done, some of these raises. Why vote against that?
So I was proud to champion the pay parity for our law enforcement officers. Let me tell you why. So just to level set, even before the HPD raise, Harris County was behind in what we were paying our sheriff's office deputies as well as our constables. We were losing folks to surrounding jurisdictions already, and we're paying approximately 10 to 20% less. Then, and by the way, we already had hundreds of vacancies in law enforcement that we were unable to fill, which results and impacts everyday people, because if you have fewer law enforcement officers, then the response times become longer when you call. So fast forward, HPD approved this 5-year raise of approximately 36.5%. Common sense. HPD this spring had over 1,000 vacancies. I think it was around 1,200. We were already having trouble filling our vacancies, and now with another 40% delta of how we're behind, it's common sense when we have law enforcement officers trying to put food on the table, pay their own rent. Of course, they're going to go to higher salaries. So in order to prevent this mass exodus, potentially, to HPD, we had to take decisive action. And public safety is my top priority. I have 3 little girls. I've been the victim of crime several times, and it is the top issue my constituents have. And on my watch, I was not going to allow this gutting, potentially, of our officers that we have trained, that have that experience, to go to another agency. So we needed a match so that we were paying fairly, competitively. And the truth of the matter is now there's more people in the unincorporated Harris County than in the city of Houston. And Harris County's on first, our sheriff's office as well as our constables. So to me, from a fairness perspective and from a fundamental necessity, when you call 911, you want someone to show up. And I was not going to let us continue to hemorrhage officers while I know that public safety is our top priority. And it's, to me, the fundamental responsibility of government. So to go to your exact question, why I did not agree with an incremental approach, this is a critical need that, frankly, has been a problem for years. And so I rather tackle it head on and make the hard decisions, because public safety is a fundamental responsibility and is the top priority of my constituents and of myself.
Commissioner Leslie Briones, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we come back, we have a conversation with one of 2 Republicans already announcing a run for the newly redrawn Congressional District 9, Alex Mueller. Welcome back to This Week in Texas. We have spent a fair amount of time on this program discussing the newly redrawn congressional boundaries in Texas. Among the districts with a vastly different constituency is CD9, which now favors Republicans, with nearly 60% of the electorate having voted for President Donald Trump in 2024. Seeking to win that seat, Alex Mueller, who you may remember ran a close race for Harris County Commissioner, narrowly losing that in her first try at elected office. She joins me now. Thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So from Harris County Commissioner to Congress, tell me why this this race?
Sure. So when I looked at the district, and it's roughly 85% Harris County, and then 15% population Liberty County, this wasn't just any district, right? This has the economic engine of Texas in it. It is the petrochemical hub. So 20% of the state's GDP, million jobs. You're talking about nationwide impact, something that's the size of Saudi Arabia's GDP. These were the issues I focused on when I ran against Judge Lina Hidalgo for county judge back in 22, was how do we work together to target critical funding to support growth in this district. And so I know this district very well. It's the Houston Ship Channel Port. It's blue collar, largely Hispanic. And the issues these voters care the most about is where the Trump administration is excelling. So jobs, jobs, jobs. And how does that show up? Well, that means we actually support business by targeting infrastructure problems. So crown jewels of the entire country, I'd argue. We quite literally fuel the country as the petrochemical hub. But unfortunately, a Pandora's box in terms of infrastructure challenges. So you go to Liberty County, still have trouble with roads, but then even down here by Ship Channel Port, the heavy haul traffic, we haven't expanded the roadways to support all of the semis. And then even worse, you talk about flood control issues and basic just draining standards. So Lake Houston, that is our drinking water. Right now, Colony Ridge in Liberty County, pretty much the wild, wild west when it comes to development there. And so you have raw sewage pouring into our drinking water. And then with the mismanagement at Harris County, a lot of our key flood control projects in Baytown specifically, they've all been cut. And when you take a step even further back, massive refinery, petrochemical hub, the state has committed $500 million to the Ike Dike. Federal so far, only $500,000. So I stepped up, raised my hand as a political outsider, saying I don't like the direction Harris County is coming. I have the skill set to fix it. Unfortunately, didn't get that opportunity, but no one expected the map to be redrawn. Saw it happen. I knew exactly how important this district was, and that my background, not somebody that came from politics. I'm a combat veteran, West Pointer, served in the Army bomb squad. And then my husband and I, we chose Houston to raise our family, build our business, have a small business that is completely dependent on the health of the ship channel, industrial gas. I know the challenges to growing jobs in this area, and I also have the skill set and the work ethic to actually get it done. And so I think the fact that I'm not someone who spent their career in politics, that actually has, been able to work well with people even across the aisle. So I'm public safety chair at Metro. We've had very real wins with public safety. I'm the lone Republican, and I've grown our police force with the support of the chair of Metro in the city of Houston. We're now 30% bigger than we were. Only police department in the region that's actually above its head count and growing. So it's all of these things where this district it's hyper-local issues. And frankly, under the Biden administration, we were neglected, right? Where here we are being this powerful jobs creator, and we have not had the infrastructure support from the federal government. And one of the obvious examples is our port, #1 in the nation. We are not competitive on depth. We are losing jobs, losing growth because our port isn't 50 feet deep. And so that's where this experience that I have working with local partners, I think is uniquely situated, and thankfully I'm not the only one that thinks that way. The lone Republican on Harris County, whose precinct overlaps heavily with this new district, Commissioner Ramsey, came out pretty strong endorsing me, as has the mayor of Deer Park and their entire city council. Houston City Council member Fred Flickinger, whose city council district really overlaps Texas 9, as well as the mayor of LaPorte, and rolling up strong law enforcement support as well. And I think that's something a lot of people remember me from.
Quickly, before we go, we're getting up against our time, but I do want to ask you this with regard to infrastructure. The Biden administration did have a large infrastructure bill, which the Trump administration has cut. Would you see yourself as someone going to fight to get some of those funds back to help that part of the state?
A lot of what that infrastructure funding you're talking about was focused on kind of Green New Deal, new energy. Where I'm trying to target is key funding for transportation infrastructure. How do we get our port deeper? How do we get money to fix roads? And what I'm so excited about the Trump administration is that he's appointed Lee Zeldin to help head the EPA, and Chris Wright, former CEO of a fracking company, Liberty. And what we're doing, and they're cutting regulation, making permitting, building faster, and that's the kind of growth But what we specifically need, which was not in the Biden administration prior infrastructure things, is how do we have a competitive port? How do we fund the Ike Dike? How do we have the right, these kind of kitchen table foundational issues to support it? Because these roadways cannot withstand without some help from the federal government, the amount of heavy haul traffic. And we're not asking for it because it's a nice to have. I mean, we're 3 million jobs powering the whole country. It's because we're Texas and we lead. And it's nice to have an opportunity to fight for our region again.
Alex Mueller, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. And we'll see you on the campaign trail. When we come back, some final thoughts for This Week in Texas. That's it for this episode of This Week in Texas. Thanks so much for joining us. For all of us here at the program, we wish you a good week. Please be kind to one another.